I get questions about how to write goals for language therapy on a daily basis. And so I wanted to pop in and answer a question that I got the other day about whether or not I could provide an example or a case study on how to write goals for language therapy. So I've said in the past that I do not typically recommend language therapy goal banks. I know that goal banks can be really convenient and kind of enticing because it can be really hard to do this lengthy language evaluation and then figure out how you actually want to articulate what you're going to be working on in therapy, especially when you are using some of the common language evaluation tools. I will say don't just write goals based on the subtest tasks. That is not going to be useful and functional. And don't use these drop down boxes on a lot of these goal banks that have these goals for rote splinter skills that aren't very functional. So don't do that. But I wanted to talk about what you actually should do. And I actually have a free guide for SLPs that gives some examples about how to do this for syntax. It is called the Ultimate Guide to Sentence Structure. And to get that guide, I'll actually post the link below this video. And you can also check it out in my Instagram bio. I've got it linked in there. But anyways, what I go through in that guide is my thought process for writing goals, because I think when it comes to writing goals for IEPs, it's more important to have a good goal writing process rather than having a goal bank. I think that you can kind of develop your language and your own goal bank essentially, or your way that you word your goals so that they are functional and useful. But I think that the process is more important than actually having some kind of a bank, because if you rely on a goal bank, a lot of times that takes the problem solving out of it. And then when you have situations where none of the goals on the goal bank are relevant to your student, then it's kind of hard to know what to do. So for syntax and really for goals in general, what I usually focus on is actually the syntax of the goal itself. So the first thing that I focus on actually wording is the observable behavior that I want to see in the goal. And I start super, super basic and general, not because I think that that's how we should always write the goals, but because in your thought process, when you're writing the goal, you want to think about what you're actually wanting the child to do and start with that. That should be the base of your goal. And then you can sort of just build out the rest of your language in your goal from there. So for syntax, if you are working on syntax with your students in therapy, the ultimate end goal is that you want them to say or write sentences with a particular sentence structure. You want to see them using a particular sentence structure with your students. So that could be what I call your base behavior there, is saying and writing sentences. So I know that sounds super broad in general, but when we ask ourselves the question, what am I actually doing? That can kind of help you to figure out how you're actually going to write the goal. Now, of course, we're going to make the goal a little bit more specific depending on each specific student, but that's where we can start to help us to figure out how you can write a goal that's going to be useful and functional and is going to be something that you're going to be able to measure. Some of the things that I see people doing are that they write these goals that are so long and wordy that you can't even really tell what we're actually working on in the goal. So we want to avoid having these wordy goals that are a paragraph long. We want to just start with the observable behavior. So with syntax in particular, how you can make it more specific is that you can specify the specific sentence structure that you are wanting to work on. That's how you can make the particular language in the goal more specific. Another thing you can do with syntax is that you might be having kids answer questions about a particular sentence. So they might be able to, you might want them to answer a question about a sentence that has a particular sentence structure, because a lot of times with syntax, kids are having comprehension breakdowns because they can't understand the message in a particular sentence. So one other thing that you can do to work on syntax, one other observable behavior, is that you can have kids answer questions about sentences that have particular sentence structures. So that's another goal that you can put in there. But I usually start with being able to say and write particular sentences. So this is how I usually do it if I'm working on more of a language, more of an academic behavior. There are certainly situations where you might want to make the goal more about the strategy to get to the end behavior rather than the end behavior itself. For example, if you're working on more of the executive functioning goals, there might be times when the goal might be about the strategy rather than the end goal. A great example would be something like if you're working on writing, you might have a goal where you want them to write a 5-paragraph essay with certain elements. That's kind of the end goal, but that could be one of your goals, but then you might have some other type of goal which has to do with your thought processes and your strategy to get there. So you might have 2 goals there. But for language, I typically start with those observable behaviors. So if you have questions about that, if you want to see some examples of how I would do that for syntax when I am focusing on the actual language academic behavior that you can see, definitely check out my ultimate guide to sentence structure. I'll link to it below so you can actually go and check it out. You can also go to drkarenspeech.com/sentence structure to download that guide. Again, that's drkarenspeech.com/sentence structure to check out that guide. And again, in this guide, I talk about my thought process for writing goals, how I problem solve through and think through how I'm going to word the language in the goal. And it always starts with that base observable behavior. Again, you want to always ask yourself the question, do I want to focus on that end goal, which in this case, with syntax, the end goal could be saying or writing sentences with a particular sentence structure, or you want to ask yourself the question, do I want to write a goal for a strategy to get to the end goal? So you want to think about how you are thinking through this. What questions are you asking yourself as you're writing those goals? And ultimately, that's going to be way more useful than using some goal bank and kind of taking this thought process out of it. So again, to go to that or to get that sentence structure guide where I walk through it, check out the link in my Instagram bio, check out the link below, or go to drkarenspeech.com/sentence